joining us today. Glad you can be here for our discussion on using your booth skills to do good. I want to talk a little bit before we get started about the Chicago Booth Alumni Club, the Chicago chapter. We've been busy all during pandemic, doing lots and lots of programming to keep people engaged. Here are only some of our upcoming programs. The Angels Network, a film screening and discussion, coffee and conversations. So we've had a real array of activities. Just make sure you're signed up on Facebook or LinkedIn for the Chicago Booth Alumni Club.org, and make sure to connect with us so you find out all our upcoming activities. We've been doing a series of Zoomcasts during this pandemic on finding meaning in work and life. And we've attracted a large number of participants to these Zoomcasts. We've talked to a variety of people, and all of our sessions have been recorded in case you want to visit them on the booth page on YouTube, or you could go directly to my name and find them. You can find them a number of ways, but the ones we've done are really relevant to today's conversation as well. So we did developing and planning your board journey about becoming a board member with Suzanne Burns at Spencer Stewart. We did finding meaning in your career with Eric Weinheimer, formerly at Forefront. We did implementing real diversity with Lyndon Taylor, who heads the Chicago office of Heinrich and Struggles and heads their diversity training. We did building resilient teams with Alana Aguilar, and we did making property taxes more equitable with Cook County Assessor Fritz Kagi. So all of those are available to you if you're interested. If you can't find them, just send me a message on LinkedIn. I'll help you get to them. So having done finding meaning in your career as our kickoff, we're now doing a session on finding meaning outside your career. And we're going to talk to our two guests, Gail Haller and Judy Malley, about the BANC program, Booth Alumni Nonprofit Consultants. Before we get started, let me introduce and say a little bit about our two guests today. Gail was the Senior Vice President for the National Executive Service Corps, a great organization that I've had the chance to work with, really recommend them. She managed clients and provided management consulting services in the nonprofit community. Before she joined the Executive Service Corps, she served in a variety of positions at Motorola, and she received her BS in political science and an MBA from the University of Chicago. Judy Malley, in addition to her BANC commitments, Judy's a consultant in philanthropy and leadership. She served as secretary of the board of Thresholds and is on the advisory board of the Chicago Booth Rostandi Center. She was awarded the Volunteer Illinois Award for Outstanding Volunteer Administrator for her work at the Metropolitan Family Services. She consulted with Baxter, worked at Sara Lee and Eli Lilly, and she earned her MBA also at Booth. So we're all Booth alum. So glad to be here. And just before we start, to clear up any confusion, it's Gail with an I and then Gail with a Y. So one of you ladies, can you tell me how you started on this journey and how we launched the BANC program?
Sure, I'll take that, Gail. Hi, everyone. We are so thrilled that you have tuned in to hear about BANC. And we hope you'll be so excited with what you hear that you will want to participate going forward. So certainly let us know if you have any questions. The other thing I have to clear up is I am a proud Badger, University of Wisconsin. My undergrad degree is University of Wisconsin. So want to clear that up. Anyway, I'd be happy to talk about the history of BANC. Judy and I, it all started in 2014, so 7 years ago. Judy and I were paired to put together a seminar for the very first on-board conference. We had never met before. And for those of you who aren't familiar with On-Board, it is a conference that is put on by the Rustandi Center on nonprofit board service. So if you're interested in board work or you're already on a board, you'll really want to check this out. We highly recommend it, and it actually starts on Friday. So, go on the booth website and take a look at it. Anyway, I digress. Anyway, we were asked to put together a seminar on how to join the right nonprofit board. As Gail, with an I, said, Judy and I were both on nonprofit boards, and they wanted us to talk about our experiences and help alumni connect to resources that would allow them to join a board. So when we arrived, we expected the room to be filled with alumni. Instead, we were quite surprised when we found about half of the room filled with not the nonprofit sector. So EDs, staff, board members, and we were guessing probably they wanted to see what we were going to tell people so that they could go and put their names on some of these sites to try and get board members. So at the end of the seminar, nonprofits came up to us and started asking us operational questions. And when everybody had left and it got quiet, and Judy and I looked at each other and we said, wow, wouldn't it be great if somehow we could tap into, the strength of the Booth alumni community and have them help nonprofits solve their most pressing problems. So we put together a proposal and took it around Booth, and eventually ended up in the dean's office. And at the time it was Dean Sunil Kumar, and he absolutely loved the idea. He was crazy about it and said, I want you to do this, and put us in touch with, the Rustandi Center used to be called Social Enterprise Institute. So if I use that term as history, it's the same as the Rustandi Center. And we also worked with alumni relations, and we put together a business plan for what became BANC. We tried it out in a pilot with 2 nonprofit organizations in the fall of 2015. Those projects concluded in the spring of 2016, and they worked so well that we said, hey, let's do this again. And so we did 4 projects in the fall of 2016. And once again, we learned a lot from them, adjusted the program a little bit. And in 2017, we were ready to launch the program and did just 1 round of BANC in 2017 and 18. And then finally, we had so much demand for services, to provide services to the nonprofit community and to our alumni base, that we decided to have 2 cycles of BANC a year, launching in the spring and fall. And that's kind of who we are. That's how it came to be.
That's great. Thanks so much for a little bit of that history. I want to talk a little bit about who volunteers, Judy, but before I do that, I just want to say the people on the call today, I went through, and of course we have data.
Of course it's Booth.
Right. So 87.6% of our attendees today are Booth alum. They range in graduation year from current to 1969.
Yay!
Yay. So we have a lot of people in the 70s and 80s. So I'm going to assume that we have people in different life cycles and different stages of the career. We also have students. We have prospective students, and we have some friends of Booth on the call as well. So it's really a diverse audience with us today. So Judy, can you tell us a little bit about who participates or has in the past, and a little bit about that demographic?
Yeah, definitely. And thanks for the stats. That's really helpful. You know how we love that.
Love it.
So we like to say that we welcome alumni in all stages, really, of life's journey. So you could have a couple years of business experience, or you could be retired and have many years of business experience. We're happy to have you. We also love having full-time professionals, part-time professionals, at-home parents. Well, a lot of parents are at home now, but I mean, not always, but we love them all. And really all alumni looking to use their business skills to do consulting projects in the community.
Great. And because I didn't mention it earlier, I just want to take a breath now and say, you could put your questions in the chat. You could raise your hand, and Carolyn Oates, who's helping us today from the university, will let us know if you want to raise your hand, and she'll unmute you when we get to it. We do have some questions that came in when you registered, and we'll get to those as well. So just as we're talking, if you need to, if you want to, please let us know your question now, and we will get to it. So Gail, I'm going to come back to you and ask you if you could give us a sampling of some of the projects that have been worked on by BANC volunteers, and maybe even some of the outcomes. We like outcomes as much as data, don't we?
Sure, absolutely. First of all, BANC serves a wide variety of nonprofits in the Chicagoland area. But most of the projects tend to be concentrated in 4 sectors: social services, healthcare, the arts, education. Our alumni gravitate towards projects in those areas. About half of our projects are in, what we would call, growth and marketing strategies. And what do I mean by that? Our consultants help organizations with tactics to expand their client base and their membership. So we have helped a theater grow their membership. We've helped put butts in seats in theaters on a particular day. We develop ideas for new sources of earned income. Some of you might have heard it called social enterprise. So what we mean by that is because funding has been cut in local and federal governments to nonprofits have had to get creative in order to increase their earned income. So if they have an asset that they can monetize, we help them figure out how to do that. So for example, if there is a plot of land that's not being used, what can the nonprofit do with that? And one group came up with a solution, which was to, put a farm in order to develop and cultivate produce for low-income folks in the neighborhood. We do business plans to target new audiences, segments, and businesses. We developed, this is going to sound like a broken record here, but we developed a business plan for an urban farm, helping them come up with new distribution channels for their produce. The other thing, probably the next most popular area that we do projects in is in the area of market planning. Think of it as marketing communications. So we will come up with a communications plan and strategy for reaching target segments. One of the areas that we helped an organization do was a child and family services organization, trying to reach parents to let them know about the programs that were available at this organization and have them become more aware of the programs and to get them to sign up their kids. Also, what's becoming increasingly important to the nonprofit community is to develop a data dashboard. As I mentioned, organizations, their funding has certainly dwindled in government and state and local organizations. So foundations are becoming more important. Individual donors are becoming more important as a source of revenue. But what those donors want is they want to see the impact. And a data dashboard will show where the money is going and what impact that money is having within the organization. So now let me get to some specific projects. I'm sure you'd all like to hear about that. I'm going to talk about 3 projects, 2 in detail, and 1 I'm just going to give you a little flavor because I would really love for you to go to our website and read more about it, which is BANC Alumni Nonprofit Consultants. First of all, I'd love to tell you briefly about a project that we're getting a lot of press, exciting press about, and that is an organization called Loaves and Fishes in Naperville. Loaves and Fishes came to BANC, and what they wanted to do was to expand their reach into new areas around Naperville in order to serve more clients. But it was something the board had thought about, the staff had thought about, but they really wanted an objective study done to see if they should move forward with it. The other thing they asked BANC to do was to do an evaluation of their current operations and facilities because they needed to address their space concerns. So you can read about what our consultants did, but we were in our BANC was featured in the Chicago Tribune and the Naperville papers because Loaves and Fishes announced that they had acquired a new warehouse and were putting into place a new hub and spoke model that BANC recommended. And so it's really quite exciting that we were given such great press, and kudos to our wonderful consultants. And so there is an example of what our consultants did and action being taken by the organization. So please go on our website, read about that organization as well as about 4 others that we did work for. But I would like to talk about a couple of others that aren't on our website that I can share with you. One I'd like to talk about is for an organization called Thresholds. Thresholds is one of the oldest and largest healthcare services for persons with severe mental illness and substance use disorders. In fact, we've done 2 projects for Thresholds. This was the second one we did for them. And Thresholds asked BANC to evaluate their substance use clinics and give them recommendations to make those clinics financially sustainable. So we put a team together of professionals who had finance experience, consulting, and healthcare marketing. And these are just some of the things that the consultants did to work with Thresholds and to deliver on their recommendations. So one thing that they did was to certainly the marketing folks, they first of all said, well, what is the market? What is the target market for substance use clinics? So they understood that. They did a competitive analysis of existing clinics in the Chicagoland area to understand things like pricing, services, positioning, what insurance did they take, really understanding the whole model. Our consultants actually mapped the member journey. They went down to the clinics. They saw what the clients, how they went through the journey of being rehabilitated in the clinics, who they saw, how many times, what they got out of it. And then in terms of the financial, the folks who worked on the financial piece, they took a look at the existing financials of the clinic to understand what all the drivers were, the cost drivers, the revenue drivers. They also took a look at how people pay for the services. There were a wide variety of individuals who came to these clinics. They were on Medicaid, some of them were private pay, some of them were insurance. And they said, how can we increase the reimbursement from those sources of revenue? They did a lot of other things, but to cut to the chase, they then put together a break-even analysis in order to come up with the best model for sustainability. They put the recommendations in place, came up with goals, tactics, and a pathway to sustainability, and presented it to the board of directors. And I think Judy and I can both say we were blown away by their recommendations. The organization was blown away by their recommendations, said that it was some of the finest work that they had ever seen. And they are planning to implement, this was just finished sometime last year, and they were just planning to implement some of the recommendations. They actually asked one of the project leaders to join the board. So that speaks volumes for the work that our bank consultants did. The other project I'd like to talk about was something that was just finished a couple of weeks ago, and that was for an organization called North Lawndale Employment Network. So what does North Lawndale do? Well, they serve the under and the unemployed residents of the North Lawndale community of Chicago and the surrounding area with employment initiatives that help individuals improve their quality of life and actually improve the economic development of the area. They work with previously incarcerated individuals and people who have recently lost their jobs or are down on their luck and are looking for training, skills, job opportunities. So North Lawndale was moving their campus, and they decided, let's open a cafe. Not only will the cafe provide job opportunities, more job opportunities, but it'll also provide a place for community where people can meet. There weren't many, if any, coffee shops in the area. It'll provide a place for people to get a cup of coffee and some food. It'll showcase what the fine work of what North Lawndale does, and it will allow them to sell products called Be Love, which are another employment initiative where people make products out of honey. So they asked Bank to help them open the cafe. And what they were specifically looking for was a marketing communications plan and help with pricing and budgeting. So we put a team of alums together who had marketing, retail experience, finance experience. So on the marketing piece, the marketers contacted a bunch of comparable cafes in the Chicago area, but also around the United States. Those who provided cafe services in the nonprofit sector. So it wasn't like they called Starbucks, for example. That's just a different model. But what they wanted to understand were best practices. Who are your clients? What's the pricing? What is the positioning of the cafe? And then they learned other things that they could use to help North Lawndale launch. They also had to determine what the target market was, looking around the area of North Lawndale and seeing who might be attracted to this cafe. And when they determined that, then they could come up with the messaging, the distribution channels for communicating the unique messaging in order to drive traffic into the cafe. They also determined the unique personality of the cafe and how to sell the Be Love products. They then came up with a tactical plan to drive traffic and sales into the cafe, and also just to generate general awareness of North Lawndale, its purpose and its impact. Judy and I talked to the project leader and the team a few days ago, and one of the things the project leader said to us is indicative of what we hear over and over again from the nonprofits. When our team presented to the North Lawndale staff, one of the staff members, our client, said to the team, "Wow, these tactics are things I can do right now." And so she put into place a lot of the tactics for opening this market, for promoting the market, for working with partners. And it's so exciting, and it's music to the ears of the consultants when they hear that. Now, the finance team, they worked with the organization, the cafe manager, to put together an operating budget, to come up with pricing, and but an operating budget that will allow them to break even or make money. And that operating budget, they turned into a tool that they left with the cafe operator so that they could use it to budget in the future and plan to make their organization thrive. So
Great.
Those are some examples.
Great. We're going to get to questions right now in a minute, but before I do that, You know, when I came in and I was the ED of the Jewish Vocational Services here in Chicago, we faced a crisis when I came in, no money in the bank, trying to make payroll, no reserves. And we called the Executive Service Corps at that time. Did an amazing project.
Right.
You and I will talk about it and really help save the agency. But Judy, I want to ask you, what makes the University of Chicago and the Booth alumni, what makes them unique in doing this? Because there are other groups like the Executive Service Corps that do it. And so maybe you could help us understand how we're different.
Yeah, absolutely. We think, well, we know that BANC's unique because it's the only alumni consulting organization in Chicago where you do pro bono consulting projects only with other Booth alums. And consultants tell us that they enjoy working with other Booth alums because they share that rigor of thought. You can tell by the projects that Gail described that there's a lot of rigor of thought. And there's also a trust that is really already kind of built in. And so everyone feels comfortable knowing how everyone else works on the project or will work on the project. And the other advantages to working with Booth alums is that we hear from many of the alums that the best part of them is actually getting to know each other socially and being able to network with each other. And we've also heard that they've learned about the other areas of Booth and the University of Chicago through their experience as a bank and consultant, you know, including the Rustandi Center, which we talked about earlier, the Polsky Center, and the Office of Civic Engagement. So it's opened up kind of a whole world within the University of Chicago through their experience with BANC.
Great. So a question that's been asked several times by people who registered earlier, and one in particular, Sean in Kansas City, says, how do I volunteer for BANC if I'm remote? We're all used to working remotely now. Can we do this remotely? Are there local chapters outside of Chicago? Judy or Dale? I'll go with either of you.
Right now, BANC is only in the Chicago area. Certainly what, you know, we're going to be having, and we'll talk about this in a few minutes, but BANC is evolving into its next phase, and we will have a new executive director and a new operating board beginning May 1st. And so we anticipate that the operating board will address some of these issues of how do we grow BANC. And because one of the reasons why we have this new operating structure is that we're growing. We have the nonprofits have many needs in the Chicago area and certainly around the United States. And we have alumni who have intense interest in participating in BANC. And this new organization structure will allow us to grow and serve both constituents better. So in the meantime, until the operating board takes a look at that issue of how we expand, we would like to direct you to our website. I mentioned this before, which is Booth Alumni Nonprofit Consultants. You'll get onto the landing page, scroll all the way down, and you will see an alumni interest form and a nonprofit interest form. And if you're interested in learning more about BANC, knowing when projects are going to start up, fill out that interest form and somebody will let you know. The flip side is if you know a nonprofit who would benefit from BANC services, would you please let them know about our services? And likewise, direct them to the BANC website and ask them to fill out the interest form. And we will be in touch and let them know when applications will be available for them to fill out in order to potentially participate in the bank program.
Great.
I think, can I add just one thing? If anyone has a question out there, definitely, as Gail said, feel free to fill out the interest form on the bank website. And also, if you have just one question or a couple, contact us at bank@chicagobooth.edu. Happy
Great.
to answer you.
You anticipated my question. I see we have Diana on with a question. If we can I, is Caroline, can I unmute?
Yes, Diana should be unmuted.
Okay, do I see a question from the audience?
Oh yeah, this is Diana. I don't know what I pushed to get a question, but I was wondering, what are the size of the teams and the length of the engagements? These kind of basic information too would be helpful.
Hi, Diana. Great question. I'd love to take that one. Maybe what I could do is talk a little bit about that and talk about the bank process, how we work. That might be really helpful. But to answer your immediate question, we put up to 6 people on a project, and that includes a project leader who manages the team. And the projects last 4 to 6 months, but we kind of joke that they're all 6 months because they can be. So because we get, the consultants to commit for 6 months. And so on average, a consultant would spend about 2 to 4 hours a week working on a project, but that will depend on, you're probably going to be assigned a sliver of the project based on your skill set and what you sign up for. So sometimes you may not have any work to do. Other times you may have more than 2 to 4 hours a week. It kind of depends. It's like your job. We are looking for people who want to roll up their sleeves and do work. If you want to give advice, this may not be the right organization for you, okay? We want people who want to do that. So Bank also launches projects twice a year. We launch them in the fall and we launch them in the spring. So let me talk a little bit about the bank process so you can understand it from start to finish. The process starts with the nonprofit and what their needs are. And so we start a cycle, as we call it, by letting the nonprofit community know in the Chicago area that we are accepting applications for this new cycle of bank. And we put the application on our website, and the nonprofit fills it out. That application goes to our nonprofit relations team, who vets the organization and reviews the applications. And the nonprofit team picks projects based on their merit and our ability to attract volunteers. We then assign a project leader to those applications that were selected. And the project leader then contacts the organization and has them, works with them to draft what's called a statement of work. And for those of you who have not heard what a statement of work is, it is a document that specifies what the problem is the organization is trying to solve and what the deliverable is that bank consultants will deliver to the organization. And then it lists all the tasks that need to be done by the consultants in order to deliver the recommendations to the organization. We then have the nonprofits sign that statement of work as a means of communicating that it can't be changed, because we use that statement of work in order to recruit consultants. So then once we have that statement of work, we ask the nonprofit to sign a memorandum of understanding, which I'm sure all of you have seen one at some point in your career, but it's a boilerplate contract that just talks about how we're going to work together. Once that is done, then we could start recruiting alumni. And the nonprofit relations team will look through the statements of work and say, what kind of skills do we need in order to complete this project? And they will write up the projects, turn that over to the alumni relations team, who then communicates project availability to the Chicago area alumni. They will let them know that the application is posted on the website, and then alumni fill out an application. The alumni relations team gets those applications in, and they review them as they come in. The project leader and the alumni relations team then look through all the applications, figure out who has the best skill set for the project, and sets up an interview with interested consultants. Once they do that, they put a team together. They have the consultants sign a volunteer agreement, which is part non-disclosure agreement. And the reason we have you sign that is because you're going to find that the organization is going to give you a lot of confidential information. And neither they nor us want you to share that information with anybody, not even your family and friends. And then also on that volunteer agreement, it talks about that you understand this is pro bono consulting. You won't charge anybody for your services. And in other areas that we want you to understand what your role is. Once that is done, we have mandatory training for everyone. We have training for our clients, for our project leaders, and our consultants. And it is, the training is to teach you best practices, to go through the bank process, and to just level set the expectations of being on a bank team. Once training is completed, you have a kickoff at the client's headquarters. Now, because of COVID, we've had to do all of this virtually. So I think we're really hopeful that once COVID is over, and we're going to let the University of Chicago dictate that, we're not in charge of that. You know, we're hoping to get back to seeing our clients in person and meeting at their headquarters. But once the kickoff happens, the project starts to take place. In the past, Judy and I would call the project leader and the client about every 6 to 8 weeks to just check in to see how things were going, make sure that the project was on track, answer any questions that the project leader or the client had. And then once the project was over, we have everybody fill out an evaluation, the client, the project leaders, the consultants, because we want to make this program better with each round of bank. We also have a celebration. We, in the past, want to celebrate in person all the good work, the hard work that everybody did. And it's wonderful to hear the clients get up and talk about, really how dedicated the consultants were, what an impact they made to the organization, that they really couldn't have done this work without them. And likewise, it's wonderful for the consultants to get up and share their experiences with the clients and each other about what they got out of the bank experience. It's truly our favorite day of the year when we have this celebration. And then we like to follow up with organizations to see how they use the recommendations. So that's kind of the bank process. Did that answer your question, Diana?
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
And again, if anybody else wants to ask, please raise your hand so that we know, and Carolyn will let you in. I want to ask a question that was submitted to us earlier. There's many ways to volunteer to help a nonprofit. You can volunteer to deliver services, work at the food bank, do tutoring. You can volunteer and serve on a board as a board member, which is another discussion we had as part of the series, or you can volunteer as a bank consultant. If you really, Judy, can you help us understand a little bit of the difference between being a bank volunteer and volunteering to work on the board? And that was part of a question Chan de Verlande submitted.
The difference between working with BANC and working on the board of an organization?
Mhm.
Sure. When you're working with BANC, you're working as a consultant to solve a problem that that organization had. You are not actually part of the organization, and you're not on the board of the organization. But that said, it's a great way to volunteer because you can help them solve an issue, but also it gives you a really good look into the inner workings of the nonprofit as you're working on this BANC project. So as Gail had mentioned, we have had people who have worked on a project, gotten to know the people they're working with at the organization, shared many, conversations, coffees over the mission of that organization. And it does happen that sometimes someone who's a BANC member has learned enough and follows it, and that they want to be an ambassador for that organization, and they will join the board. But there are different expectations for a board member, which, I won't go into it too much, but that's something you want to make sure that you understand what your role would be on the board and what's expected of you in terms of time, treasure, and talent on that board.
Is there any financial commitment that?
Yes, and that's the treasure. It used to be that was a little secret when you look to join a board. It really is no longer a secret. You should feel free to ask if you're talking to a board member, what is the financial expectation and what is the time expectation? Will you be on different committees? Which ones, and also thinking about what skills you have that could help that organization. So for instance, if you have finance skills, you could go on the, potentially on the finance committee. And actually one additional point is that you don't need to necessarily join a board to help on a committee. That depends on the organization. But either way, they're really two different things, being on a board and working on a consulting project. Because also, as we mentioned, the consulting project ends after 6 months, and the team has delivered the results to hopefully the board of directors, or usually the board of directors, but then their time has actually finished. So again, it's not quite the same as being on the board of directors of an organization.
Well, thanks for that answer, and that makes it clear, Judy. I just want to say as we wrap up that I've had the chance to serve now on my second BANC project. And it's just been so rewarding for all the reasons you mentioned, meeting other Booth alum at all stages of their career and life, and some of us retiring or semi-retiring, others with young kids who make the time to do it, others who, just graduated and might bring in other types of knowledge. Real mix of people. It makes me up my game when you're in a group that's really thinking hard and working hard together. So I've enjoyed the process. Thank you for allowing me to serve on these two projects. And I think we all want to say, on behalf of everybody, Judy and Gail, thank you for launching this terrific program. We're so proud that our Booth skills can be put to use to do better and to do good for organizations that really need our help. So thank you all, and thank you for attending today. You know how to follow up with all of us. If you didn't catch the addresses on the chat, we're all on LinkedIn, and you can send us messages that way too. And also, I want to tell you to just stay tuned for other events from Chicago Booth Alumni Club, and we can't wait to be back in person someday soon. So thank you all very much. Nice seeing you today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.